TRK, go buy yourself some lemon taffy. No refunds. Please support local businesses. You know, even with food inflation all over the world, you probably can buy a giant truck's worth of taffy. You know what, TRK? All you need is this. Here you go, here you go. There you go. TRK, you're set. You do this, touch some lawns, public lawns, if you touch someone else's house lawn, you might get in trouble. Go to some parks. There we go. Touch your own lawn. Breathe, drink water. Watch. I think you're on the right track to a better, safer life. Best wishes, TRK. Almost 2 weeks ago, my bathroom was and is currently being redone, and so I've been working at Starbucks, while that's been going on, getting a lot of stuff done, with my projects, with my website, and Pokemon Highlander, stuff like that. And before, I go to Starbucks, I usually get I break my fast and get a pretty early lunch, pretty late breakfast. We're in brunch territory around 10 a.m., right? And, I usually have a little bit of time before that. And so I've gone to Black Bear Diner twice already during this 2-week span. It's my favorite place to eat in Kansas City, along with Jess and Jim's Steakhouse. Used to be also Ameristar and Hometown Buffet, which was Old Country Buffet, but those two places, unfortunately, aren't around anymore. Ameristar is still around, but no buffet. Anyway, next to Black Bear Diner is the Independence Center, which is an awesome mall. And I didn't realize that the mall was open, as early as 9 o'clock. But stores are starting to open up. Most of them, I think, open up around 10:30. But yeah, you got stores starting to open up. You can use the vending machine still. And what was cool is being able to walk in, and there were people already there walking around, right? And then what I noticed is the playlist was still doing that. It was playing the 80s, 90s mall music. And I sat there and I was like, I wonder how self-aware the owner of Independence Center is, because ever since the 2010s, there's been a big push for the Vaporwave movement. It's its own genre. Basically, they took mall music and they labeled it its own genre. Before that, I think a lot of times people would say it's kind of like instrumental jazz, kind of like an instrumental, like coffee rock, stuff like that. A lot of jazz-oriented based music. But it often was associated with walking around malls, 80s, 90s aesthetics, a lot of reverb. And what's cool is that millennials and Gen Zs, you'll see, kids and teenagers and adults in the YouTube comment section of Vaporwave music saying, wow, I wish I could go to a mall. They say, oh, I love this music. I miss going to the mall. And you realize that not only malls have been dying, but to have a really good mall like the Independence Center still up and running and then still playing that music, it's pretty tremendous. I found out that the Independence Police Department runs there. And I actually ran into one of the officers. He was going to get coffee, but it wasn't open yet. And we had a nice conversation about kind of the art form of malls. And, unfortunately, they've, more and more malls have been going down, but Independence Center is actually pretty sought out by people that kind of want to visit pretty genuine malls. And I was just talking to him I told him about the Vaporwave movement, and the music you're listening to right now. I love the Atlantis themes from Glover, and a while back I talked about how much Glover made an impact with Vaporwave before Vaporwave even existed. Glover really nailed that aesthetic that you hear at malls in terms of those Atlantis themes. And yeah, you're hearing it right now, and definitely one of those favorite songs ever. All three of the Atlantis themes, really cool. And I was talking to him about the Vaporwave movement, and I was wondering how self-aware the owner or whoever's running the playlist is of it. I know people actually seek out the CDs. It's not something I don't think a lot of people did in the 80s and 90s, but there's a lot of people like my age, younger, around my age, that want those mall CDs. And then people often will sample it and make Vaporwave music from it, or they'll just like import it, as long as all the copyright's okay. And yeah, it's really cool to see such a nice appreciation for what's basically considered, it's honestly one of the closest things you could get to, and it's like an ironic monopolized utopia. I should say monopoly, because honestly, not monopolized. Thankfully, the businesses there in general, it's good, healthy competition with other businesses. It's more about the irony is it's like a business utopia. And there's a lot of good memories associated with that. You go with your friends and family to the mall. In fact, that officer was sharing memories he had of, hanging out in the food court for hours with friends when he was young. He just loves, a mall like the Independence Center. And I loved hearing that. And I just love hearing the artistic endeavors of how much the music from malls gets people to reflect and feel nostalgia. And what's so funny is, again, with Vaporwave and Synthwave, I see comments about like, wow, I didn't even grow up in the 80s and 90s, but this makes me feel nostalgic. It's interesting, that type of power that type of music has, and it's really cool that there are people just on YouTube that are archiving the Malls of America, which the officer told me to check out, was that kind of Malls of America archivist guy. And it's really, it is cool that there are people out there. The core ambition of archiving malls is really cool. Whether you're just starting on YouTube or you have a long time account, if your intention is to just really archive, honestly, history, and kind of show that artistic endeavor, the multiple artistic endeavors that went into making shopping malls, it's really cool. The Vaporwave aesthetic is often associated with like a VHS analog type of compression, and it threw me off in the best way possible when I walked in and I heard Vaporwave music. It's like, oh yeah, it's a mall. And it's awesome. What a great place to hang out, and I hope the best for Independence Center. I love Mondays.